Edward is this family's pride. You're nothing but the disgrace we're forced to bear. My dad snarled at his graduation party, his face a mask of furious indignation. Then, as I exposed the truth with a merciless slideshow, he choked on it, tearing his carefully constructed celebration apart. But what happened next, the slow, agonizing unraveling that followed, left their golden image in ruins, exposed for the world to see. My name is Scott, I am 26 years old, and if you were to ask my family about me, they would probably, and somewhat dismissively, say I am the other son. It's not a fun title, not one you put on a resume, but it's simply how they've described me for the past decade. 10 long years. Ever since my younger brother, Edward, 3 years my junior, began his ascent to what they perceived as utter perfection. Edward was the golden child, the son around whom our entire family orbited. He was the captain of the varsity soccer team, a brand-name athlete in our small town, scoring goals that brought crowds to their feet. He secured a full scholarship to a top-tier university, his academic prowess celebrated with banners and boastful pronouncements. He always possessed this innate, effortless way of making everyone else around him, especially me, feel like nothing more than mere background characters, props in the grand unfolding drama of his story. For a long time I honestly thought I was just being bitter, consumed by the petty sting of feeling perpetually second place. But after what happened at his graduation party, a night etched permanently into the fabric of my memory, I stopped pretending. I stopped trying to rationalize, to minimize, to understand. To truly comprehend the seismic shift of that night, the rupture it caused, you need to understand what came before. I was never a troublemaker, never caused a ripple in the calm, predictable surface of our family life. My grades were, by their standards, stubbornly average, not failing but never exceptional enough to warrant celebration. I preferred to stay quiet, respectful, observing the world from the periphery. I loved to draw, sketching intricate worlds and characters in my notebooks, finding solace in the silent act of creation. I had a knack for coding, for understanding the logic behind machines, building simple websites and programs in my spare time. And on weekends I found genuine peace helping out at the local animal shelter, surrounded by creatures who offered unconditional affection without judgment. But I never bragged about these passions, never gave long, impassioned speeches at dinner, like Edward, recounting some athletic triumph or academic breakthrough. I didn't win awards, at least not the kind my parents recognized, and frankly I didn't care about showing off. And because of that, because I didn't seek the spotlight, it felt like I simply didn't matter. My parents never articulated it straight out, never sat me down for a cruel, direct declaration. But you feel it, deep in your bones, when their gazes slide past you, searching for another, more brilliant reflection of themselves. You feel it when your quiet efforts, your small triumphs, are met with an almost dismissive silence, or worse, a soft patronizing, "Oh, that's nice, honey," delivered with a tone that implies anything but genuine interest. Yet, if Edward scored an AB+ on a test, a common occurrence for him, they would treat it like he had single-handedly cured a major disease or pioneered a new scientific field, his achievement magnified to world-changing proportions. Their praise for him was effusive, public, constant. Things only escalated, becoming more acutely painful, when Edward entered high school. He was 2 years my junior, but even before our years overlapped in the same hallways, the comparisons had already begun, insidious and inescapable. My mom would proudly brag about his test scores, reading them aloud over dinner, before mine had even made it onto the fridge. My dad, during one particularly brutal conversation that still echoes in my mind, once looked at me with a detached, almost pitying expression and uttered words I will never, ever forget. "Not everyone is meant to shine, Scott," he said, his voice gentle but firm, delivering a casual death blow to my self-worth. Maybe Edward just has that special spark. That phrase, special spark, stuck in my mind, a barbed hook, making me feel like I was merely the warm-up act, the bland opening before the real dazzling performance. I moved out at 19, the ink barely dry on my high school diploma, desperate to escape the suffocating shadow of Edward's spark. I found a remote IT job, a lifeline to independence, diligently saved every penny, and rented a small one-bedroom apartment in the city. It wasn't fancy. The walls were thin, the kitchen tiny, but it was mine. A sanctuary. I never asked my parents for anything, not a dime, not a favor, not even advice. At the same time, Edward, upon getting his driving test, Was immediately gifted a brand new car, sleek and shiny, its price tag a silent testament to their unequal affection. He even convinced them to pay half his tuition, a ridiculous gesture given he already had a full scholarship. I kept quiet. I stayed away, physically and emotionally. I showed up for holidays, pasted on a polite smile through endless family dinners, and meticulously avoided any hint of conflict. But inside, the hurt grew deeper, twisting into a knot of pain and disbelief, not jealousy, but a profound sadness that they could so easily ignore one child while polishing the other like a gleaming trophy. Then came the graduation party. It was held at a country club, an exclusive venue just outside town, an obvious reflection of Edward's elevated status. White tablecloths draped over round tables, a professional DJ spinning generic pop music, and a towering elaborate cake with congratulations, Edward written in elegant blue icing. I received the invitation only 2 weeks prior, a short, almost impersonal text from my mom. Hope you can come. It would mean a lot. But I knew deep down it wasn't a genuine invitation. It was merely a performative gesture, a box they felt obligated to tick so they could later claim, "Of course we invited Scott." Still I went. I always did. Perhaps a foolish part of me still hoped, against all logic, that this time they might finally notice me. The place was packed. Relatives I hadn't seen in years, Edward's myriad friends, his beaming professors, even old neighbors I barely recognized. I stood near the bar, nursing a ginger ale, feeling utterly invisible as people flowed past me like I was a transparent pane of glass. A few, prompted by some vague sense of familial duty, asked politely, "Oh, you're Scott, right?" But their eyes would already be scanning the room, searching for Edward, their attention quickly moving on. Everyone undeniably was there for Edward. Then the dreaded toast began. My dad, radiating pride, tapped his glass with a spoon, and the room almost instantly hushed. He stood in the center of the floor, his arm slung casually around Edward's shoulder, a wide, triumphant smile stretching across his face. "To the child who actually made us proud," he boomed, his voice carrying clearly over the microphone. The room responded with a small, appreciative laugh, almost a collective agreement, a few polite claps. My Aunt Janice, God bless her, lifted her glass and with a knowing look that wasn't quite kind added, "Good thing we didn't waste money throwing one for you, Scott." More chuckles followed like ripples in a pond. I smiled, a fixed, practiced rictus, nodded, and even lifted my glass, a performance for their benefit. But my hands were shaking, trembling almost uncontrollably. My mom joined in, her voice softer, almost conspiratorial as she sipped her wine. "Some kids are just disappointments," she murmured, her gaze distant, as if stating an incontrovertible fact of nature. "That's life." She said it like it was nothing, a casual observation, but the words cut through me like poison wrapped in silk, sharp and insidious. I stood perfectly still, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. I looked around the room desperate but saw no one react, no one flinch. No one gasped, no one whispered that it was cruel. To them it was simply the truth. And at that moment a fundamental piece of my identity, a deep foundational belief, shattered inside me. Something irrevocably shifted. I stayed silent, a statue of quiet fury. I stepped into the hallway, the cool, patterned wallpaper a stark contrast to the burning in my chest. I leaned my back against it, breathing in and out slowly, trying to regain control. From my pocket, I pulled out a small metallic USB stick, rolling it between my fingers, its cold weight a tangible reminder of my simmering resentment. I had argued with myself for weeks about even bringing it. I had meticulously built it, clip by clip, photo by photo, screenshot by screenshot, recording by recording, a carefully curated digital dossier of their neglect. But I hadn't truly planned to actually show it. I thought maybe, just maybe, my presence alone, my silent witness, would be enough. I thought perhaps they would see me. But when people ignore you long enough, when their blindness becomes a deliberate act, you stop asking for their attention. You stop pleading. You make damn sure they can't look away. Back inside, the DJ, a young man with a perpetually bored expression, was struggling to get the official slideshow of Edward's life to play. I walked up to him calmly, an almost serene smile on my face. "Hey," I said, my voice even. "My mom asked me to help with that. Can I check the file?" He shrugged, clearly relieved, and passed me the laptop. With one swift, practiced click, I ejected the USB that was already inside, seamlessly pushed in mine, quickly renamed the file, and without a single word turned and walked away, back to my quiet corner. I sat down again, picked up my ginger ale and waited. I let the crowd gather, their chatter rising to a crescendo, their eager anticipation palpable. I waited until the lights dimmed, plunging the room into near darkness, and the giant screen flickered to life. The first few images were innocuous, perfectly ordinary. A baby picture of Edward, gurgling in a high chair. Edward, a tiny figure, kicking a soccer ball on a sunny field. Edward with cake on his face, a classic childhood moment. Then the rhythm shifted. The next slide showed a photo from my 12th birthday. Me sitting by myself at a table, a single cupcake with a solitary candle in front of me. No balloons, no guests, just the quiet, echoing absence. I had forgotten that picture even existed, buried deep in the recesses of my memory, but there it was, stark and undeniable. Below it, in bold white text, were the words, "Forgotten." Again. A collective murmur rippled through the room. Another slide. Edward's gleaming brand new car, parked proudly in the driveway. Then a screenshot of a bank transfer, clear and undeniable, showing the substantial amount my parents had wired to help him buy it. A secret revealed. Next to it, a picture of the old second-hand bike I had ridden for 3 years, its chain rusted, its seat torn, a symbol of my own quiet, unacknowledged independence. People started whispering, their voices growing louder, their comfortable smiles faltering. Then came 2 graduation photos side by side. Me standing alone, a somewhat blurry figure in front of the school sign, my simple cap and gown a stark contrast to the opulence around us. Edward's, him beaming, surrounded by a throng of cheering friends and family, the country club ballroom packed for his celebration. I saw people's faces twist uncomfortably, their expressions shifting from polite curiosity to dawning horror, a collective realization washing over them. Then came sound. A voicemail, crackling slightly, filled the suddenly tense room. It was my mom's voice, unmistakable. "Scott," she began, her tone dismissive, "we don't think it's a good idea for you to come to Thanksgiving this year. Edward's friends will be there. And well, it might be awkward." A collective gasp. Slide after slide kept coming, a relentless damning parade of evidence. Text messages, emails, more photos, handwritten notes, years of being ignored, diminished, mocked, lined up in clear, irrefutable order. There was no denying it, no explaining it away. Then, with an abrupt, definitive click, the screen went dark. Just as the entire room fell into an utterly profound, terrifying silence. I stood up. I wasn't shouting, wasn't raging, wasn't performing a histrionic display of emotion. I simply picked up my glass, its ginger ale untouched, and walked slowly into the center of the room. Their faces, once so self-assured, now looked pale, almost ghostly in the dim light. My dad looked like cold water had been poured over him, his usual bluster replaced by a shocked, silent horror. My mom's hand hovered near her wine glass, trembling uncontrollably, the carefully constructed facade of her perfect evening shattered. Edward just stared, his eyes wide and vacant, as if his entire story, his carefully crafted narrative, had been rewritten, utterly destroyed, while he was still living it. And I, for the first time in my life, I smiled. A slow, quiet, utterly genuine smile. The silence was heavy, oppressive, thick enough to cut with a knife. You could have heard a fork drop, the sound echoing like a thunderclap. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their faces etched with a mixture of shock and dawning shame. Someone coughed nervously in the back, a desperate attempt to break the tension. The DJ, his face a mask of wide-eyed panic, looked ready to disappear under his console. The lights rose slowly, reluctantly, as if even they were scared to illuminate the faces of those present, to reveal the raw emotions now laid bare. I looked around, taking it all in, imprinting every detail onto my memory. Shocked faces, some genuinely horrified, others merely curious, their eyes darting between me and my family. A few brave souls stared at me with what felt like respect, or perhaps a deep, unsettling guilt. My mom's wine glass remained frozen halfway to her lips, her eyes wide, unblinking. My dad's jaw was tight, his arms locked across his chest, a desperate, futile attempt to appear impassive, as if staying perfectly still could somehow make this unreal. Edward looked utterly lost, adrift, his entire world suddenly upended. I walked forward slowly, deliberately, my heart beating hard, yes, but steady, strong, unwavering. I didn't rush. I wanted every single footstep to echo in that cavernous, silent room, a testament to my presence. I didn't even touch the microphone. I didn't need to. My voice, when it came out, was calm and clear, carrying effortlessly to every corner of the room. I really was. I began, my voice ringing with an undeniable truth. I came here tonight thinking maybe, just maybe tonight would be different. That maybe just once I would hear something kind, something affirming. Or at least be treated like I actually mattered. My Aunt Janice shifted uneasily in her chair, her gaze dropping to the floor. My cousin, Edward's friend, looked down at his shoes, unable to meet my eyes. But then, I continued, my voice hardening slightly, I remembered the toast. And I finally realized I hadn't been invited here as a guest tonight. I had been invited as the joke. I turned sharply, directly facing my dad, his face now a roadmap of conflicting emotions. I spent years, I said, my voice low but potent, asking myself what mistake I made. Why I was never enough. Why you could look at one son with such overwhelming pride on your face, and look at the other like he was nothing but a typing error on a form. But tonight, I declared, my voice rising slightly, infused with a newfound exhilarating freedom. Tonight I stopped asking, because I finally saw the truth. It was never about me. It was always about you. My dad tried to speak, a guttural sound, but I simply lifted my hand, a gesture of absolute finality, to stop him. No. You've spoken enough. All of you have. Then I looked straight at my mom, her face now a stunned, disbelieving mask. Do you know what hurts the most? I asked, my voice laced with a quiet, devastating pain. It isn't the insults. It isn't the neglect. It's the way you acted like my very life was a problem. Like caring about me, truly caring, was just too much work. Work you couldn't be bothered to give. Her face looked as if I had physically slapped her, the impact more profound than any physical blow. I turned slowly, my gaze sweeping across the faces of the stunned guests, the silent witnesses. My voice still calm but now imbued with an undeniable, challenging power, addressed them directly. You all laughed. You clapped. Some of you even joined in. You made me the butt of your jokes, the punching bag for your amusement. But tell me this, I challenged, my voice ringing with clarity. If I had stood up here tonight and said those exact same things about Edward, would you have laughed then? No one replied. The room remained in a state of total agonizing silence, their faces reflecting a dawning realization, a sudden, unwanted introspection. I didn't come here tonight to destroy the night, I continued, my voice unwavering. But I also didn't come here to be shamed again. I've been quiet for years. Far too many years. I thought maybe if I kept showing up, kept proving myself, kept being the good, quiet son, you'd finally see me. But now I understand. The problem was never me. The problem was that I could never become what you wanted. And I'm done chasing something that was never real. I walked deliberately to the gift table. A grand display piled high with dozens of wrapped boxes, elegant envelopes and shiny ribbons, all for Edward. I searched until I spotted mine. A thick, plain white envelope I had placed there earlier, containing a gift card for a high-end art supply store. A small gesture of brotherly support. I picked it up, held it for a second, feeling the faint imprint of my own hope, then with a decisive, unhesitating movement, ripped it straight down the center. No pause, no second thought, no hesitation. I let the pieces flutter to the table, small white confetti of shattered expectations. You don't need my gift, I said quietly, my voice ringing with finality. You've already given yourselves more than enough. Then, without another glance back, without another word, I turned and headed for the door, my footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Behind me, the dam finally broke. Voices started rising, whispers, gasps, punctuated by the nervous, hurried reassurances of some. I heard my cousin, his voice barely audible, mutter, "Did he really just?" I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. By the time I reached halfway across the vast, empty parking lot, the tears finally came. Not because I was broken, not because I was sad, not even because I was angry, but because for the very first time in years I felt utterly, completely free. My phone buzzed, a harsh vibration against my hand, just as I reached my car. It was a message from Edward. What was that? Why would you do that? You embarrassed everyone. You embarrassed me. I looked at his words for a long moment, the familiar self-centeredness of his outrage. Then with a newfound clarity I typed back. Now imagine living that way for 10 years. I pressed send, then with a profound sense of liberation blocked his number. I thought that was the end of the night, the final crescendo of the drama. But my phone rang again almost immediately. This time it was an unknown number. A shaky, unfamiliar voice spoke on the other end, tinged with a mix of fear and remorse. Scott, it's Aunt Janice. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was that bad. I should have spoken up sooner. Can we talk? Her voice cracked with genuine guilt. That's when it hit me, with the force of a sudden revelation. Maybe this wasn't only about payback, about cutting ties. Maybe, just maybe, it was finally about being heard. But not every call was kind, not every message sympathetic. The next morning, fueled by either rage or a desperate attempt at damage control, my mom posted on Facebook, her words dripping with self-pity. Some people just don't understand family. You give your best, and they still find a way to attack you. The comments section, however, was a whirlwind of divided opinion. Some blindly defended her, their loyalty unwavering, while others questioned her vague accusations. A few, brave or simply curious, even linked the slideshow video, because someone, a silent observer at the party, had recorded it and within hours unleashed it online. It had already gone viral. And that, I realized, was only the beginning. The video spread faster and more furiously than I could have ever imagined. By noon the next day, my phone was buzzing incessantly with texts from people I hadn't seen since high school. Old classmates, distant neighbors, even a girl I had barely known who simply wrote, I always thought something was strange about your parents. Watching that, wow. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It felt like a dam had burst, releasing years of pent-up pressure. Years of unspoken truths I had buried deep within myself. And it wasn't just me. Others who had witnessed my family's behavior over the years but had stayed silent were now finding their voices, speaking out in my defense. It began with a single Reddit post, shared by someone who had been at the party, I still don't know who. The post, titled, I just saw the most brutal graduation revenge in real life, detailed everything. The slideshow, the searing words I spoke, the ripped envelope. Within hours, someone had posted the actual video in the comments, confirming every detail. From Reddit, it spread like wildfire to Twitter, then to TikTok. I couldn't open a single social media app without seeing my face frozen on the screen, standing in front of my family, staring them down like some ghost returned to remind them of their sins. I hadn't planned for any of this. I hadn't sought internet attention. All I had truly wanted was for my family to finally see me. But now it seemed the entire world had. Edward was the first one to respond publicly, though not to me directly. He posted on Instagram a carefully curated photo of himself at the party, smiling, the graduation cake prominently in the background. His caption read, even the best nights face drama. Keep shining anyway. The comments section exploded. Half were his clueless friends writing things like, proud of you, bro. Ignore the haters. But the other half, the new audience they knew. People linked the viral video, quoted my mom's dismissive voicemail from the recordings, and asked why he had never defended his brother. One person's comment, sharp and incisive, cut through the noise. Imagine watching your parents humiliate your sibling for years and only smiling for the camera. By the end of the day, Edward had wisely shut off comments. That's when my mom called. I stared at my phone for a long moment before answering, a part of me wanting to ignore it, but another deeper part needing to hear what she would say. Her voice when she spoke was stiff, clipped, like she'd been crying but was desperately trying to conceal it. Scott, she began, her tone accusatory. I don't even know where to start. Maybe start with an apology, I said, my voice calm, utterly devoid of shouting or anger. I said it the way you'd casually ask someone to pass the salt. She paused, the silence stretching. You blindsided us. That was supposed to be Edward's night. You blindsided me. I cut in, my voice unwavering. Every birthday, every holiday, every time. You made me feel like I didn't belong in my own house. I spent years being ignored, mocked, and shoved aside. And you're worried about one slideshow. Silence, then a soft, wet sniff. It wasn't meant to sound like that, Scott. You've always been different. Harder to reach. I almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You mean harder to brag about? That's not fair, she protested, a resurgence of her typical indignation. What's not fair, I retorted, is Edward getting praise just for breathing, while I had to fight just to be noticed. You think this is about one party? That was just the surface, Mom. Her voice cracked again, dissolving into barely suppressed sobs. You made us look like monsters. You made yourselves look like monsters, I corrected. I just held up the mirror. She went quiet, her breathing uneven, shallow. Then finally, in the smallest voice I had ever heard from her, she asked, What do you want from us, Scott? I leaned back on my couch, staring at the ceiling, a profound weariness settling over me. Honestly, I said, my voice soft, I used to want you to care. But now? Now I just want peace. I ended the call before she could answer. That night my phone rang again. This time it was someone I never expected. My Uncle Ralph. He lived in Oregon, a distant, almost mythical figure who rarely showed up for family gatherings, always seen as the eccentric odd one out. He was the person who had given me my very first sketchbook when I was 8, sparking my passion for art. I hadn't spoken to him in years. Kid, he said, his voice warm, even amused, you blew the roof off. I laughed, a genuine, unburdened laugh, the tightness in my chest finally breaking. Didn't think you saw it. Oh, I saw it, he chuckled. Everyone saw it. I've been telling your mom for years she treated you like wallpaper. But she always said you were just quiet. Glad you finally made some noise. We ended up talking for 2 hours about family, about how he too had been shoved aside for being different, for being an artist, for not marrying young, not working in finance, not going to church every Sunday. He told me I reminded him of himself, a younger, more intense version. He told me he was proud of me. And he told me that if I ever needed to step away from the chaos, I could come stay with him, take a break, breathe some fresh, clean air. I cried after that call. The tears were the quiet kind that slip out when someone finally says what you've been desperate to hear for years. Time moved on swiftly, inexorably. More texts came, more posts appeared. The digital ripples of my confrontation spreading far and wide. A few old friends loyal to Edward unfollowed me, a quiet excision from their lives. Others, however, reached out, their messages filled with unexpected empathy, saying they always thought I was just the quiet one. But now they understood I had only been pushed into silence. Then came a job offer, utterly unexpected, not from family, but from someone who had seen the video, who had been moved by my story. They were the creative lead of a non-profit organization that worked with kids who felt forgotten, who felt invisible. They told me they wanted someone who truly understood that feeling, someone who could channel their pain into something useful, something beautiful. They wanted me. And just when I thought the family drama was finally behind me, a strange letter showed up in my mailbox. No sender listed, only my name, written in neat, elegant handwriting. Inside was an invitation to Edward's second graduation party. This one, it explicitly stated, was for family only. The card read in a slightly shaky script, "Let's heal." And right under it, in my dad's unmistakable handwriting, a single poignant plea. Please don't bring a USB this time. I sat with the letter on my lap for nearly an hour, staring at it, the words swirling in my mind. No return details, no RSVP, just that single handwritten request. Please don't bring a USB this time. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Guilt, perhaps? Curiosity? Or had I finally found the elusive closure? But my hand stayed steady. Not like before, when their messages made me shake, made my stomach churn with anxiety. I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just a dull ache, like pressing on an old bruise you've lived with so long it hardly hurts anymore. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and left it on the counter. 2 days later I called Uncle Ralph. I got an invitation. I told him, a hint of irony in my voice. To what? He chuckled, his voice warm. Edward's redemption party? Something like that, I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. You thinking of going? He asked, sensing my hesitation. I'm not sure, I admitted. There was a quiet pause on the line. Then Ralph said, his voice imbued with a gentle wisdom. If you do go, kid, go for yourself. Don't go to make them happy. Go because you've got something to say. I thought about his words. letting them sink deep into my consciousness. The next morning I packed a small bag. The party, the family-only gathering, was to be at our old family home, the place I hadn't entered in almost 5 years. I pulled into the driveway as the sun was setting, casting long purple shadows across the familiar lawn. Everything looked exactly the same. The shutters still had peeling paint, the porch light still flickered erratically, and the wind chimes Mom had bought at a flea market a decade earlier still hung by the door, rusty and knotted. I knocked once, a tentative rap that echoed in the quiet evening. No answer. I turned the handle. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of candles mixed with old wood, and the lingering ghost of Sunday dinners past. Inside, the living room had been rearranged, its usual furniture pushed aside. Folding chairs, borrowed and mismatched, lined the space, and streamers drooping unevenly, drooped across the doorways. A crooked banner over the fireplace, clearly homemade, read, "Congratulations again, Edward." Only about 10 people were there, just close relatives, my parents, a couple of aunts and uncles, a cousin or two, and Edward. Edward wore a pale blue dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, trying to look both relaxed and polished, a carefully constructed image. He turned, his eyes wide with surprise, to see me standing there. "Scott," he said, his voice a little shaky. "You came." "Apparently I'm still family," I replied, walking past him into the living room. My mom rushed over, her face looking more drained, more fragile than I remembered. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were rimmed red, as if she hadn't slept in days. "I'm glad you came," she whispered, her voice tinged with a desperate hope. "We were hoping to start over." I said nothing. "Not yet." My dad stayed back near the drinks table, stiff and unyielding, his lips pressed into a tight line. He looked like he hadn't agreed with inviting me. Or maybe he was just waiting for me to cause trouble. Soon everyone migrated into the dining room, a long table crowded with mismatched chairs, a silent testament to the diminished family circle. Dinner was spaghetti, garlic bread, and salad, the standard uncomplicated family meal, a relic of simpler times. My mom insisted I sit beside her, a futile attempt at enforced closeness. Edward sat at the head of the table, his usual place of honor. The conversation was empty, nervous chatter about traffic, the unpredictable weather, someone's new dog. No one dared to mention the slideshow. No one dared to mention the viral video. No one dared to mention the public humiliation. The unspoken truth wasn't just hanging in the room. It was stomping across the lasagna, heavy and undeniable. About 20 minutes in, Edward stood and tapped his glass, drawing everyone's attention. "Can I say something?" he asked, his voice a little too loud, a little too practiced. Everyone looked at him, their faces expectant. "I just want to thank you all for coming. And to my brother." He glanced at me, a brief, uncomfortable flicker in his eyes. "I know the last party didn't go the way we wanted, but I'm glad you're here tonight." "Really?" He raised his glass. Everyone, a well-trained chorus, copied him. I lifted mine slightly, a perfunctory gesture. Then he added, his voice gaining a manufactured sincerity, "I want to apologize. I didn't realize how rough things were for you. I guess I got caught up being the one they leaned on, but that doesn't make it right." A few people mumbled awkward sounds of agreement. My mom dabbed at her eye with a napkin, as if even that weak, self-serving apology was something heroic, a profound act of contrition. I stayed seated. I didn't clap. I just stared at him, my gaze unwavering, then slowly, deliberately I stood up. "I'm glad you said that, Edward," I replied, my voice calm, clear, resonating with a quiet power. "Because I've got something to say, too." My mom stiffened, her hand flying to her chest. My dad set his glass down too hard, the clink echoing in the sudden silence. "I didn't come here to start a fight," I said, my gaze sweeping across their anxious faces. "I came because you asked me to. Because I thought maybe this family could finally act like." I looked around at all of them, their faces a mixture of fear and reluctant curiosity. "But I won't sit here and pretend one dinner fixes everything." I turned directly to my parents, my voice laced with years of suppressed pain. "You made me feel small most of my life. You never defended me. You never apologized when I was ignored, mocked, or left out at your table. You allowed it. Worse, you encouraged it." My dad opened his mouth to interrupt, a familiar protest forming, but I snapped. No, you don't get to cut me off. You raised a golden child and pushed the other into the dark. That wasn't an accident. That was your choice. I looked at Edward, his face now a mask of profound shock. And you? You saw it all. You didn't just benefit from it. You thrived in it. You made sure the spotlight stayed on you because you liked it there. And even now, your apology sounds casual, like this was just about one party. It wasn't. It was about years of being treated like I didn't exist. The room froze, the silence absolute, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. But I do exist, I said, my voice steady, imbued with an unshakable sense of self. And I'm not angry anymore. I'm not here to guilt you. I'm here to tell you I'm finished. Finished begging to be seen. Finished showing up only to be ignored. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small plain white card. I came tonight to say this to your faces. I placed the card on the table, a stark contrast to the scattered plates and half-eaten food. This is my new number. If you want to be in my life on my terms, use it. If not, that's fine too. I looked one last time around the table, a final lingering gaze. My mom's lip trembled. My dad looked like he had swallowed glass, his face ashen. Edward just looked utterly, completely shocked. Then, without another word, without a backward glance, I turned and walked out. It wasn't dramatic. No one chased me. No one yelled, begged, or threw a drink. It was quiet. It was final. And it was stronger than anything I could have planned, more powerful than any carefully constructed slideshow. When I got to my car, I sat behind the wheel for a long time, just breathing. The night air was cool on my face, refreshing. The windows fogged slowly, obscuring the view of the house. My heart, which had been pounding hard just moments before, finally slowed down, settling into a calm, steady rhythm. This time I didn't cry. 2 weeks passed. No calls. No texts. Not even a voicemail from Edward, Mom, or Dad. And I was fine with that. More than fine. I started my new job at the nonprofit. They gave me a bright, sunny corner desk, a small, vibrant plant, and a brass nameplate that simply read Scott. I led my first group of students, kids who had been overlooked, pushed aside, ignored by their own families, by their own systems. Kids whose faces lit up, whose spirits soared, when someone simply remembered their name, when someone truly saw them. I saw myself in every single one of them. For the first time in my life, I knew with absolute certainty where I belonged. Then one afternoon, another letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address again. I opened it carefully, a faint sense of trepidation. Inside was a single photo taken at the dinner table. It was a photo of me, standing at the head of the table, glass in hand, right before I spoke my truth. I hadn't noticed anyone taking pictures. On the back, in my dad's familiar, deliberate handwriting, it simply said, "Thank you for not bringing a USB this time. You brought something louder." No apology. No call. But I smiled anyway, as I didn't need one. They had heard me. And that was enough.